I think the psilocybin experience might be one portal of entering into the multiverse. The idea that time can be bent. There are multiple universes occurring simultaneously in different realities. And I've had one experience in particular that is just unfathomable to me. I don't know how to explain it.
Give it a shot.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. It's a very deeply personal experience to me, but my brother John, he died unfortunately 2 years ago. He got me involved in mushrooms. John went to Mexico, Colombia, came back with great stories of eating psilocybin mushrooms, and as my older brother, I just idolized him. And he has a book called Altered States of Consciousness. I'm just fascinated reading it, about all these different ways of expanding your consciousness. I'm 14 years of age. So my best friend, Ryan Snyder, says, Paul, can I borrow your book? We're hanging together all the time. And I go, yeah, but I need it back. And so he borrows my book, and he doesn't return it. Several days pass, a week pass, 2 weeks pass. My brother's coming back on break. Said, I needed that book back, Paul. And I go to Ryan. I go, Ryan, I need my book. And Ryan just kept on avoiding answering the subject. And so I said, finally, give me my book. And Ryan goes, I can't give it to you, Paul. I said, why? He says, my dad burned it. I said, your dad burned my brother's book? I go, WTF. I said, oh my God. Shout out to Ryan Snyder's father. Because of that event, it stimulated my interest in altered states of consciousness even more. John calls me up. And he says, Paul, I think I found some psilocybin mushrooms. I said, John, how many did you find? He goes, you would not believe it. It's a huge amount. You better come up here right away. So I jumped in my car and I drove up from Olympia to Seattle, about 60, 70 miles. I get to his house, and John's there, and I go, well, where are we going? He goes, well, we need some grocery bags, get on our bikes, and let's go down there. I go, why all the secrecy? And the problem is, well, you'll see. And we get there, and right across the street is a police substation. So we're there, and it was an eruption of this mushroom. There had to be 10,000, 30,000 mushrooms. It was about 50 feet by 30 feet. It was solid mushrooms. There are mushrooms everywhere. I've, to this day, never seen so many mushrooms in one concentrated area. So we waited till the police cars went away, and we started picking mushrooms. And then the other students are walking by. What are you doing? Oh, nothing. And then we eventually go, yeah, there's plenty for everybody. So. So we got about 8 or 10 grocery bags full of these mushrooms.
How bizarre.
It turned out to be a new species called Psilocybe stuntzii.
You picked a mushroom that no one knew existed before.
Well, it hadn't been described scientifically. We had known about it for about 3 years, but we go back to the house. And it's like, we got to dry them. The whole newspapers were just covered with mushrooms. And so that night, 4 guys from Yale, all neurophysiology, all scientists, we had to eat 50 of them, made these incredibly distasteful milkshakes, and we chugged them and we drank them. Amazing experience. I bonded with my brother. It was beautiful. And then you're peeking at this experience. You look around, and there's like tens of thousands of these mushrooms. Like, oh my gosh. All for science. And I'm laying in bed and full-blown experience, and can barely sleep because all the colors are keeping me awake and my mind is racing. And then I have a lucid dream, and I'm dreaming, and I wake up and I go downstairs and I go, I had this crazy dream. And what's your dream? And I said, I saw thousands of cattle dead, baking in the sun. I think there's going to be a nuclear war. But what could kill all these cattle? There's a time of Reagan administration and all that, and the tension was really high between the Soviet Union and the United States. So they laughed and they said, well, when's the world going to end, Paul? And I go, well, it's not this weekend. That was like in 2 days. It's next weekend. So they wrote on the calendar, December 1st. I put it in my book. I think it's 1975. Paul predicts the end of the world. So we forgot about it. Massive rains the next week. Huge amounts of snowfall. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, temperature inversion, and it flipped to 75 to 85 degrees. All the snow started to melt. All the rivers were flooding. And my little cabin was right next to this river that would swell from morning to night. It would go up 6 feet just from the snow melt, because it's very close to this volcano and big glaciers. I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my manuscript, all my research. I need to get up there. Roads are being closed, so I had to go through Rockport, Washington, the back way in order to get back to my cabin. I get to my cabin, and the bank had eroded about 10 feet. I was only about 10, 12 feet away from the river now. My cabin was on the verge of falling into it, but I got my manuscript. I got all my books. I rescued all the material I had, but I couldn't get out of there. And so I had to wait 2 days. The roads then opened up, and I drove out of the valley into the Snohomish Valley, And I went around the bend, and there, the sun, it was a brilliant sunny day, a warm day, and there floating in the fields were hundreds and hundreds of dead cattle.
Whoa.
How do you explain that? I entered, I think, into the multiverse.
Whoa.
This is true. This happened to me. And I think that we need to accept the fact that the reality is not limited to the perception that we have traditionally used.